The lie came so easily, I almost believed it myself. "Lucas, honey, I need to ask you a favor," I said, curling up next to him on our beige sectional sofa. The evening news droned in the background, casting blue light across our living room. 6-year-old Mila was finally asleep after her third request for water, and the apartment felt peacefully quiet for the first time all day. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My husband looked up from his laptop, his dark eyes curious behind wire-rimmed glasses. At 35, Lukas still had that methodical, careful way of listening that had first attracted me during college. Now, after 7 years of marriage, it sometimes felt more like being studied under a microscope. "What kind of favor?" he asked, closing the laptop and giving me his full attention. That should have made me feel guilty, but instead I felt annoyed. Why did he always have to be so intense about everything? "Well, remember my friend Jessica from work? She's having this girls' night thing after the company retreat next Friday. They need somewhere to crash for the night because their hotel fell through last minute." The words flowed smoothly, each detail carefully crafted over the past week. "I was thinking maybe they could use our place. You could take Mila to your parents for the night. Make it a fun sleepover with Grandma Pat." Lukas tilted his head slightly, a habit I'd grown to hate. It meant he was processing, analyzing, probably finding holes in my story. "How many friends are we talking about?" "Just 3 or 4. They're all really responsible. Jessica, Maria, and maybe Sarah from accounting." I reached over and touched his arm, letting my fingers trace the soft fabric of his grey sweater. "They just need somewhere safe to stay, and you know how much I love having people over. We never get to entertain anymore." That last part stung because it was true. We used to have dinner parties, game nights, couples over for drinks, but somewhere along the way, our social life had withered. Lukas blamed his demanding IT consulting schedule. I blamed his general lack of enthusiasm for, well, everything that mattered to me. "I guess that would be okay," he said slowly. "Mom would love to have Mila overnight. She's been asking for weeks." He paused, studying my face. "But why can't they just get another hotel, or stay at Jessica's place?" My chest tightened, but I kept my expression relaxed. Jessica's apartment is tiny, and you know how expensive hotels are downtown. Besides, I already mentioned it to them, and they were so grateful. I'd hate to back out now. From down the hallway came Mila's small voice. "Mummy, can I have more water?" "I'll get it," Lukas said, standing up. As he walked toward her room, he called back. "When did you say this was happening?" "Next Friday night. They'll probably get here around 8, after dinner." I pulled out my phone and pretended to check my calendar. "I'll make sure everything's clean and ready." When Lukas returned, he was carrying Mila, who had somehow convinced him she needed just one more hug before bed. Our daughter's dark curls were messy from sleep, and she blinked at me with drowsy confusion. "Daddy says I get to sleep at Grandma's house on Friday," she mumbled against his shoulder. "Can we make cookies?" "I'm sure Grandma would love that," I said, smoothing her hair. "Now back to bed, little one." After Lukas tucked her in again, he returned to the living room and picked up his laptop. "So, these work friends of yours," he said casually. "Do I know any of them? Have they been to any of our parties before?" The question caught me off guard. We hadn't thrown a party in over 2 years. "I don't think so. Jessica started after our last big gathering, but you'd like her. She's really funny and smart." Lukas nodded, but something in his expression made me nervous. He had this way of filing away information, storing it up until he could cross-reference everything. It was probably what made him good at debugging code, but it made him exhausting to live with. "Well, I trust you," he said finally. "If these are your friends, then they're welcome here." I should have felt relieved. Instead, his easy agreement made me feel worse. Lukas trusted me completely, and I was about to betray that trust in the most fundamental way possible. But, as I headed to the bathroom to get ready for bed, I pushed down the guilt and focused on the flutter of excitement in my stomach. Tomorrow I would text Elliot and confirm our plans. Friday night, I would finally have what I'd been craving for months, a few hours of feeling desired, appreciated, alive. Lukas was already in bed when I emerged from the bathroom, reading some technical manual with the same focused attention he gave everything. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "You know what? I'm actually glad you're doing this," he said. "You've seemed stressed lately. A night with your friends will be good for you." I slipped under the covers, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and shame. "Thanks for being so understanding. I love you." "Love you too," he murmured, already turning back to his book. As I lay in the dark listening to him breathe, I told myself this wasn't really cheating. Elliot and I were just going to talk, catch up, maybe have a glass of wine. We'd been together for 2 years before I met Lukas, and we'd remained friends, sort of. The fact that I hadn't seen him in over a year, or that my pulse raced every time he texted, didn't mean anything. I was just lonely. Lukas worked constantly, came home tired, fell asleep reading technical manuals. When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Elliot did in his messages? When had he last made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room? I deserved this one night. I deserved to feel wanted. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. I'd spent the day in a state of nervous energy, double-checking that Lukas and Mila had everything they needed for their overnight at his parents' house. "Are you sure you don't want me to stay and help set up?" Lukas asked as he loaded Mila's overnight bag into his Honda. "I could pick up some wine, make sure you have enough snacks." No, that's sweet, but we're fine," I said quickly. "Jessica is bringing wine, and honestly, we'll probably just order pizza and talk until way too late. You know how women get when we're together." Mila ran up and wrapped her arms around my legs. "Bye, Mummy. Grandma says we're making chocolate chip cookies and watching princess movies." "That sounds perfect, baby." I knelt down and hugged her tight, breathing in her little girl scent of strawberry shampoo and playground dust. For a moment, the guilt threatened to overwhelm me. What kind of mother was I? What kind of wife? But then Lukas kissed my cheek, a quick, distracted peck, and reminded me to have fun with the girls. And the familiar resentment flared back to life. He was so casual about leaving me alone, so confident that I would just be here waiting when he got back. When was the last time he'd been jealous, possessive, passionate about anything involving me? After they drove away, I had 2 hours to prepare. I showered, shaved my legs for the first time in weeks, and spent 45 minutes choosing an outfit that looked casual but flattering. Finally, I settled on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out my eyes. At 7:45, my phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. "Just parked. Is the coast clear?" My hands trembled as I typed back, "Yes, apartment 4B. I'll buzz you up." I'd met Elliot Rains during my senior year of college, and for 2 years he'd been the center of my universe. Charming, spontaneous, full of big dreams and grand gestures, he was everything I thought I wanted. We talked about marriage, kids, the future, until he'd gotten cold feet and broken up with me 3 months before graduation. I'd been devastated. Then I'd met Lukas in my first job, and his steady reliability had felt like exactly what I needed. He was the opposite of Elliot in every way. Dependable, logical, committed. We dated for 3 years, married in a small ceremony, bought this apartment, had Mila. But lately, especially since Elliot had started texting me again 6 months ago, I'd begun to wonder if I'd settled for safety instead of passion. The buzzer rang at exactly 8 o'clock. I pressed the button to let him up, then stood in front of the hallway mirror, checking my appearance one more time. My reflection looked guilty, but also more alive than I'd felt in months. When I opened the door, Elliot was exactly as I remembered, tall, lean, with sandy brown hair that always looked like he'd just run his fingers through it. His green eyes crinkled when he smiled, and he was carrying a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of yellow tulips. "Jeannie," he said, using the nickname only he had ever called me. "You look incredible." "Hi, Eli." I stepped back to let him in, hyper-aware of how small our apartment suddenly felt. "You didn't have to bring flowers." "I wanted to. I've missed this place." He looked around the living room, taking in the family photos on the mantel, Mila's art project stuck to the refrigerator, the general lived-in comfort of our home. "It suits you. Very domestic and cozy." Something in his tone made me defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing bad. It's just different from what I imagined for you. Remember how you used to talk about traveling the world, writing that novel, living in New York?" He set the wine and flowers on the kitchen counter. "I pictured you in some chic loft, not suburban family life." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm happy here. Lukas is a good husband, and Mila is the best thing that ever happened to me." "Of course," Elliot said quickly. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I just meant that you always had such big dreams." I opened the wine, needing something to do with my hands. "Dreams change. People grow up." "Some people do." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and unfamiliar. "But you don't seem grown up to me. You seem diminished." The word hit me like a slap. "Excuse me?" "Your texts, Jeannie. You sound so lonely, so frustrated, like you're disappearing into someone else's life." He reached out and touched my arm. The Iphigenia I knew was fierce, ambitious, full of fire. Where did she go? I poured 2 generous glasses of wine, my hands shaking slightly. "She became a mother. She became responsible." "Is that what you call it?" Elliot took the glass I offered and settled onto our couch, the same couch where Lukas and I watched the news every night, where we'd conceived Mila, where we'd had 1,000 mundane conversations about bills and schedules and grocery lists. "What do you want from me, Eli?" I sat down next to him, not quite touching but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Why did you reach out after all this time?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his wine. "Because I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I let you go because I was scared, because I thought I needed to be free to become who I was supposed to be. But I never found anyone like you. No one who challenged me, who made me want to be better." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Eli, I know you're married. I know you have a family. But when you started texting me back, when you told me how unhappy you were, I had to try. I had to see if there was still something between us. I should have stopped him, should have told him this was wrong, that I loved my husband, that he needed to leave. Instead, I heard myself saying, 'I think about you sometimes, about what might have been different.'" "Show me," he said softly. And I did. We talked for hours, curled up on the couch like we used to in college. He told me about his job in marketing, his apartment across town, the women he'd dated who never quite measured up to his memories of me. I told him about the loneliness of being married to someone who treated me like a comfortable piece of furniture, about feeling invisible, about wondering if this was all there was to life. "You deserve better than this," he murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on my hand. "You deserve to be worshipped, not taken for granted." When he kissed me, it felt like coming back to life, like remembering who I used to be before I became Lukas's wife, Mila's mother, before I became practical and responsible and boring. We didn't sleep together. I wasn't ready to cross that line. But we kissed and kissed some more until nearly 3 in the morning. When Elliot finally left, I felt dizzy with possibility and sick with guilt. I spent the rest of the night cleaning up any trace of his visit, rehearsing the stories I would tell Lukas about Jessica and the girls. By the time my family returned Saturday afternoon, I had my narrative perfected. "How was your night?" Lukas asked, unpacking Mila's things while she chatted about cookies and movies. "Really nice," I said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. "We stayed up way too late talking and drinking wine. I'm exhausted, but it was exactly what I needed. Good, he said, kissing my forehead absently. I'm glad you had fun with your friends. As I watched him move around our kitchen, putting things back in their proper places, I felt a surge of irritation. He didn't ask for details, didn't seem curious about my evening at all. If the situation were reversed, I would have wanted to know everything. Who said what they talked about, whether I'd had a good time. But Lukas just assumed I'd been exactly where I said I'd been, doing exactly what I claimed to be doing. His trust felt less like love and more like indifference. That night, as he fell asleep reading another technical manual, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment with Elliot. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. The following Friday, we were scheduled for dinner at Lukas's parents' house, a monthly tradition I'd grown to dread. Patricia and Richard Marchant were perfectly nice people, but they had a way of asking innocent questions that felt like interrogations, and Patricia in particular had always seemed to find me slightly lacking as a wife for her precious son. "Do we have to go?" I asked Lukas as I got dressed, choosing a conservative navy dress that I hoped would meet Patricia's approval. "I'm still tired from last weekend." "Mom's been looking forward to it all week," Lukas replied, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Besides, Mila loves seeing her grandparents." As if summoned by her name, Mila burst into our bedroom wearing her favorite purple dress and mismatched socks. "Are we going to Grandma's now? Is she making her special chicken?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "And I'm sure she'll have those dinner rolls you love too." The Marchant family home was a modest 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where neighbors still waved to each other and kids rode bikes in the street. Patricia answered the door with her usual warm smile, immediately scooping Mila into a hug. "There's my beautiful granddaughter. And Jeannie, dear, you look lovely. A little pale, though. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine, Patricia, just tired from work." I accepted her brief hug, noting how her eyes seemed to catalogue my appearance, searching for something amiss. Richard emerged from the living room, tall and distinguished at 67, with the same careful way of observing the world that Lukas had inherited. "Good to see you both. Lukas, I wanted to ask you about that security system you recommended for the Hendersons next door." As the men fell into technical discussion, Patricia ushered Mila and me toward the kitchen. "Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. Jeannie, would you mind helping me with the salad?" I found myself standing at the familiar granite counter, chopping vegetables, while Patricia bustled around the kitchen with practiced efficiency. She'd been making the same Friday night dinner for decades. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, dinner rolls, and apple pie for dessert. "So tell me about this girls' night you had last week," Patricia said casually, not looking up from the gravy she was stirring. "Lukas mentioned you had some work friends over." My knife paused mid-chop. "Oh, that. Yes, it was nice. Just a few women from the office who needed a place to stay." "How thoughtful of you to open your home like that. I don't think I've met any of your work friends. What are they like?" The questions felt innocent enough, but something in Patricia's tone made me defensive. "They're lovely. Jessica is in my department, and Maria works in accounting. Very professional, responsible women." "I'm sure they are. It's just that Lukas seemed a bit unsettled when he came to pick up Mila that night. He kept checking his phone, like he was worried about something." My hand stilled completely. "Worried about what?" "I don't know, dear. He just seemed distracted. You know how he gets when he's processing something?" Patricia glanced at me sideways. "Everything is all right at home, isn't it?" "Of course everything's all right." I resumed chopping with more force than necessary. "Lukas worries about everything. You know that better than anyone." "True," Patricia said with a small laugh. "He's been that way since he was a little boy. Always thinking 3 steps ahead, always looking for problems to solve." Dinner conversation started normally enough. Mila chatted about school, Richard told stories about his golf game, and Patricia fussed over everyone's plates. But I could feel Lukas watching me, and every casual question felt loaded with hidden meaning. "So, Jeannie," Richard said as Patricia served dessert, Lucas tells us you've been reconnecting with old friends lately. That's nice. It's important to maintain relationships outside of work and family. I wouldn't say reconnecting exactly, I replied carefully. Just having the occasional girls' night. You know how it is. Sometimes you need time with people who knew you before you were a wife and mother. Of course, Patricia said. Though I have to admit, I'm curious about these friends. In all the years you and Lucas have been together, I don't remember you mentioning Jessica or Maria. The bite of apple pie turned to ash in my mouth. They're newer friendships, work relationships that have developed over the past year or so. That's wonderful, Patricia continued. I'd love to meet them sometime. Maybe you could bring them to one of our family barbecues this summer. Maybe, I said non-committally. Lucas set down his fork and looked directly at me. Actually, Mum, I've been meaning to ask Jeannie about that night. When I picked up Mila the next morning, Mrs. Chen from downstairs mentioned she saw someone leaving our building very late, around 3 a.m. The room went completely silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to maintain eye contact with my husband. That's strange, I said. We were all asleep by midnight. Maybe she saw someone from another apartment. Maybe, Lucas agreed, though she was pretty specific about seeing someone come out of our stairwell. Patricia and Richard exchanged a look that I pretended not to notice. Mila, oblivious to the tension, was concentrating on eating around the crust of her pie. You know Mrs. Chen, I said with a laugh that sounded forced even to my own ears. She's always keeping track of everyone's comings and goings. She probably saw someone visiting the Johnsons on the 3rd floor. Probably, Lucas said again, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it for a second. The rest of the evening passed in stilted conversation. Patricia made an effort to keep things light, asking about Mila's upcoming school play and discussing holiday plans. But I could feel the undercurrent of suspicion, the way Richard kept glancing between Lucas and me, the careful way Patricia chose her words. As we were leaving, Patricia pulled me aside while Lucas was getting Mila's coat. Jeannie, dear, I hope you know you can talk to me if you ever need anything. Marriage isn't always easy, and sometimes we all need someone to listen. Thank you, Patricia, but really, everything's fine. She studied my face for a long moment. I'm sure it is. It's just that Lucas has seemed different lately, more withdrawn, and tonight, well, there seemed to be some tension. Lucas has been working too much, I said firmly. We're both stressed. It's nothing that can't be worked out. Of course, Patricia said, but her expression remained concerned. Just remember, dear, that trust is the foundation of any good marriage. Once that's damaged, it's very difficult to repair. Her words followed me home and kept me awake long after Lucas had fallen asleep beside me. Did she know something? Had Lucas confided his suspicions to his parents? And more importantly, what exactly did Mrs. Chen see that night? The next few days passed in a haze of paranoia and forced normalcy. Every time Lucas looked at me, I wondered what he was thinking. Every casual question felt like a trap. When he asked about my day at work, I found myself over-explaining, providing unnecessary details about meetings and projects. You seem nervous lately, he observed on Wednesday evening, as we cleaned up after dinner. Mila was in the living room, absorbed in a coloring book. Nervous? I'm not nervous, just tired. Work has been crazy. I scrubbed the same plate for the 3rd time, my hands shaking slightly. Maybe you should take some time off. Go visit your sister in Chicago, or take a spa weekend with your friends. The suggestion should have sounded caring, but something in his tone made me suspicious. Why would you want me to leave town? Lucas paused in loading the dishwasher. I don't want you to leave town. I want you to relax. You've been on edge since that girls' night last week. I have not been on edge. Jeannie, he turned to face me fully. You jumped when the phone rang yesterday. You've been checking your messages constantly, and you've been asking me about my schedule every day, like you're keeping track of my whereabouts. The accusation stung because it was true. I had been monitoring his movements, trying to figure out if he was investigating me somehow. I'm just trying to coordinate our schedules. Is that a crime now? No, but it's unusual for you. Usually, I have to remind you 3 times about dinner plans or parent-teacher conferences. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message. I grabbed it quickly, but not quickly enough to miss Lucas's sharp look. The message was from Elliot. Thinking about you. When can I see you again? I deleted it immediately, but Lucas had already noticed my reaction. Work emergency? He asked. Just spam, I lied. Some marketing thing. That night I lay awake listening to Lucas breathe and wondering how much longer I could maintain this charade. The guilt was eating me alive, but the memory of Elliot's kiss, the way he'd looked at me like I was the most fascinating woman in the world, kept pulling me back. I wanted to see him again. I needed to see him again. Thursday afternoon, I texted him back. This weekend, I'll figure something out. But figuring something out proved more difficult than expected. Lucas had no plans to visit his parents, no work emergencies that might take him away from the apartment. Worse, he seemed to be paying more attention to me than he had in months, asking about my day, suggesting we watch movies together, even initiating sex for the first time in weeks. It should have made me happy. Instead, it felt suffocating. Friday evening, as we sat on the couch watching some mindless sitcom, I decided to take a risk. I was thinking of meeting Jessica for drinks tomorrow night, I said casually. She's going through a rough patch with her boyfriend, and she could use someone to talk to. Lucas muted the television. Jessica from work? The one who was here last weekend? Yes, she's really struggling, and I think it would help her to get out and talk to someone who understands. Where were you thinking of going? The question caught me off guard. Lucas never asked about the specifics of my plans. Just that wine bar downtown, the one near my office. Sounds nice. What time? Around 7, probably. I might be out late, depending on how she's doing. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. Well, tell Jessica I hope things work out with her boyfriend. It's hard when relationships hit rough patches. Something in his tone made me look at him sharply, but his expression was perfectly neutral. Saturday evening, I dressed carefully in a black wrap dress and heels, telling myself I was just trying to cheer up a heartbroken friend. The lie felt thinner each time I repeated it, but I clung to it anyway. Have fun, Lucas said as I kissed him goodbye. Drive safely. I met Elliot at a small restaurant across town, far from anywhere Lucas and I usually went. He was waiting at a corner table, looking handsome in a dark blue shirt that brought out his eyes. You look beautiful, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. Neither was I admitted, sliding into the seat across from him. We ordered wine and appetizers, falling into the easy conversation that had always characterized our relationship. Elliot told me about his latest project at work, a marketing campaign for a luxury hotel chain. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, feeling witty and attractive and alive. I've missed this, he said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I've missed you. Eli. I started to pull away, but he held on gently. I know this is complicated. I know you have a family, responsibilities, but I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what we could have if you were brave enough to take it. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you back, Jeannie, really back, not just stolen evenings and secret texts. I want to wake up next to you, travel with you, build a life together. My heart pounded. That's impossible. I have Mila to think about. Kids adapt, and from what you've told me, she might be happier with parents who are actually happy instead of just going through the motions. The suggestion was intoxicating and terrifying. Leave Lucas, break up our family, start over with Elliot. I need time to think, I said. Of course, but don't take too long, okay? Life is short, and we've already wasted too many years. When he walked me to my car, he kissed me again, longer and deeper than before. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my mind spinning with possibilities. Lukas was reading in bed when I got home, just after 11. "How's Jessica?" he asked without looking up from his book. "Better. Talking helped." I headed toward the bathroom to wash off my makeup and the scent of Elliot's cologne. "She's going to be okay." "Good. I'm glad you could be there for her." As I brushed my teeth, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My eyes were bright, my cheeks flushed. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly kissed, thoroughly desired. I looked guilty as hell. When I came out of the bathroom, Lukas was still reading, but something about his posture seemed different, tense. "Everything okay?" I asked, sliding under the covers. "Fine," he said, but he didn't look at me. "Just trying to finish this chapter." I lay in the dark, listening to him turn pages and wondering if he suspected anything. The smart thing would be to end this now, to stop seeing Elliot before things went too far. But as I drifted off to sleep, all I could think about was the way Elliot had looked at me across the dinner table, like I was the answer to every question he'd ever had. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was still in my bathrobe, making coffee while Lukas and Mila worked on a puzzle at the kitchen table, when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Lukas said, but I was already heading toward the door. Through the peephole, I saw a uniformed man holding a clipboard. My stomach dropped. "Can I help you?" I asked through the door. "Building security, ma'am. I need to speak with Mr. Marchant about some footage he requested." I felt the blood drain from my face. Behind me, I heard Lukas's chair scrape against the floor. "I'll handle this," he said quietly, moving past me to open the door. The security guard was young, probably early 20s, with a professional demeanor that made me nervous. "Mr. Marchant, I have that footage you requested from last Friday night, the lobby cameras and the fourth-floor hallway." "Thank you," Lukas said, accepting a manila envelope. "I appreciate you getting this to me so quickly." "No problem, sir. The building manager said to let you know that if you need any additional footage or have questions about the timestamps, just give us a call." After the guard left, I stood frozen in the hallway while Lukas examined the envelope. Mila looked up from her puzzle, curious about the interruption. "Daddy, what's in the envelope?" "Just some work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing exciting." His voice was calm, but when he looked at me, his eyes were cold. "Jeannie, can I speak with you privately?" "I need to get dressed," I said quickly, "and Mila needs breakfast." "Mila's already eaten, and this can't wait." He walked into our bedroom, and after a moment's hesitation, I followed. He closed the door behind us and set the envelope on the dresser. "Want to tell me what's on this footage before I look at it?" he asked. My mind raced, searching for an explanation, a story, anything that might salvage the situation. "I don't know what you mean." "Mrs. Chen saw someone leaving our building at 3 a.m. last Friday. Someone who came from our floor. I checked with the Johnsons and the Patels. They didn't have any visitors that night." He picked up the envelope. "So, unless you want to maintain that your work friends Jessica and Maria somehow turned invisible, I think we both know what I'm going to see when I look at this." The careful way he spoke, the methodical presentation of facts, was so typically Lukas that I wanted to scream. Even discovering his wife's betrayal, he approached it like a problem to be solved, evidence to be analyzed. "It's not what you think," I said desperately. "Then tell me what it is." I sank onto the edge of our bed, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "It was Elliot, my ex-boyfriend from college. He came over that night." Lukas was very still for a long moment. "Elliot Rains. You remember him?" "I remember you crying for 3 months after he broke up with you. I remember you saying he was the biggest mistake you'd ever made." His voice was eerily calm. "What was he doing in our apartment?" "We just talked, that's all. He's been going through a hard time, and he reached out to me for advice." "At 3 a.m. We lost track of time. In our home, in our bed." "We weren't in our bed," I said quickly. "We sat on the couch and talked. Nothing happened, Lukas. I swear to you, nothing physical happened." He stared at me for a long moment, then opened the envelope and pulled out several printed photographs. Even from across the room, I could see they were security camera stills, black and white images with timestamps in the corner. "These show him entering the building at 8:07 p.m., Lukas said, his voice deadly quiet. "And leaving at 3:23 a.m., 7 hours, Jeannie. You spent 7 hours with your ex-boyfriend in our home while I was at my parents' house with our daughter." "We talked, that's all we did." "About what? What could you possibly have to talk about for 7 hours with someone you haven't seen in years?" I couldn't answer that without admitting how unhappy I'd been, how lonely, how much I'd been confiding in Elliot about our marriage. So I said nothing. Lukas set the photos on the dresser and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, more final. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" "Get out of this room. Get dressed and get out. I need to think." "Lukas, please, let me explain." "You had a chance to explain. You chose to lie instead." He opened the bedroom door. "I'll be in my office. Don't disturb me." I spent the rest of the day in a state of panic, trying to figure out how to fix this. I played with Mila, made lunch, did laundry, all while my mind raced through possible explanations, apologies, ways to make Lukas understand. But every time I approached his office door, I heard him talking quietly on the phone, making calls, handling the situation with the same methodical approach he brought to everything else. That evening, after Mila was in bed, he emerged from his office carrying a folder. "We need to talk," he said. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd kissed Elliot just a week earlier, and Lukas opened the folder. "I've been doing some research today," he said, "about divorce proceedings in New York, custody arrangements, asset division." My heart stopped. Divorce? What did you think was going to happen, Jeannie? That I'd just pretend this never occurred? But nothing happened. I told you, we just talked. You lied to me. You brought another man into our home, into our bed. Not our bed. And you spent the night with him while our daughter was away. Then you lied about it to my face, to my parents, probably to your family too. He pulled out a sheet of paper. "I called a lawyer today, filed for legal separation." The room spun around me. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Lukas, please. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can... Can we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been planning this for a while. The mysterious work friends, the sudden interest in girls' nights, the way you've been acting for months." He leaned forward. "How long have you been in contact with him?" I couldn't lie anymore. The truth was written all over my face. 6 months, I whispered. Something shifted in his expression. The last trace of hurt disappeared, replaced by something harder. 6 months. And how many times have you seen him? Just twice. That night and yesterday when I said I was meeting Jessica. He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already suspected. The lawyer says I have grounds for an at-fault divorce, adultery, even without physical consummation, if I can prove emotional infidelity and deception. You're going to destroy our family over this? I'm not destroying anything, Jeannie. You already did that. He stood up, closing the folder. I'll be staying in the guest room until we can work out a more permanent arrangement. In the meantime, I suggest you find yourself a lawyer. As he walked toward the hallway, I called after him desperately. What about Mila? You can't take her away from me. He paused in the doorway. Mila deserves better than parents who lie to each other. She deserves better than a mother who brings strange men into her home. He's not a strange man, and I would never do anything to hurt her. You already have, Lukas said quietly. You just don't realize it yet. That night, I lay alone in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. A week ago, I'd been a wife and mother with a secret. Now I was facing divorce, custody battles, the complete destruction of the life I'd built. And somewhere across town, Elliot was probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that his reappearance in my life had cost me everything,